Imagine waking up every morning to the uncertainty of whether the lights will turn on. This is a nation where basic necessities like food and medicine are scarce, and the once vibrant economy is now a ghost of its former self. This is the reality for Cubans today, as they grapple with one of the most severe economic and energy crises in the country's history. In this video, we'll delve deep into the complexities of Cuba's current predicament, examining how it compares to the infamous special period of the 1990s. So let's dive into the past a bit, shall we? Imagine Cuba as a kid who's been getting all their toys and candy from a rich uncle. Suddenly, that uncle, the Soviet Union, decides to pack up and move away. What happens to the kid? Well, a pretty rough time, that's what. This is essentially what happened to Cuba in the early 1990s. The special period was a time of extreme economic hardship that followed the collapse of the Soviet Union. Think of it as the Cuban version of a Great Depression, but with a tropical twist. When the Soviet Union fell, Cuba lost its primary source of economic support. The island nation was suddenly cut off from a steady supply of oil, food, and other essential goods. It was like being stranded on a desert island without a coconut tree. The result was a dramatic decline in living standards. People struggled to find enough food to eat, and basic necessities like electricity and transportation became scarce. The economy was in shambles, and unemployment skyrocketed. It was a tough time for Cubans. Now, let's compare this to the current situation. Is it as bad as the special period? Well, that's a tricky question. While the current crisis isn't quite as severe in terms of absolute deprivation, it does share some key similarities. For instance, both periods have been characterized by economic hardship, shortages of essential goods, and a decline in living standards. So, while the current crisis may not be as extreme as the special period, it's still a significant challenge for Cuba. And with the added complexities of the global pandemic and the ongoing US embargo, the situation is far from easy. Alright, let's get down to brass tacks. What's the deal with Cuba's economy right now? Well, it's not exactly a picnic. To put it simply, Cuba's economy is struggling. We're talking about high inflation, rising unemployment, and a GDP that's, well, not growing very fast. It's like trying to run a marathon with a broken leg. If we look at the numbers, the picture gets even bleaker. Inflation has been on a wild ride, meaning that things are getting more expensive and people's purchasing power is shrinking. Unemployment has also been on the rise, leaving many Cubans struggling to make ends meet. And as for the GDP, it's been pretty stagnant, indicating that the economy isn't expanding as it should be. So, what's causing this mess? Well, it's a complex mix of factors. One of the biggest culprits is the US embargo. This decades-old policy has severely limited Cuba's access to international trade and investment. It's like putting a chokehold on the Cuban economy. But that's not the only problem. Global economic trends, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and rising energy prices, have also had a negative impact. And let's not forget about domestic issues like inefficient government policies and corruption, which have contributed to the crisis. In short, Cuba's current economic woes are a perfect storm of external pressures and internal challenges. It's a tough situation, and there's no easy solution. Let's talk about another big problem facing Cuba: the energy crisis. It's like trying to run a car on empty. Cuba's energy sector has been struggling for years. The country is heavily reliant on fossil fuels, particularly oil, to meet its energy needs. This dependence on imports has made Cuba vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices. When prices rise, it puts a strain on the country's finances. To make matters worse, Cuba's energy infrastructure is aging and inefficient. This means that the country is losing a significant amount of energy due to transmission losses. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a leaky hose. In recent years, Cuba has been making efforts to diversify its energy mix and reduce its reliance on fossil fuels. The government has invested in renewable energy projects, such as solar and wind power. However, these initiatives have been hampered by a lack of funding and technical expertise. As a result of these challenges, Cuba has been experiencing frequent power outages and energy rationing. This has had a significant impact on daily life. Businesses have been forced to close, schools have had to cancel classes, and hospitals have struggled to provide essential services. It's like living in a constant state of uncertainty. The energy crisis has also had a negative impact on the economy. Businesses are less productive when they don't have reliable access to electricity. And when businesses suffer, it can lead to job losses and a decline in living standards. It's a vicious cycle. So, how does the current crisis stack up against the special period? Let's take a closer look. One of the biggest similarities between the two periods is the economic hardship. Both crises have been characterized by shortages of essential goods, rising prices, and a decline in living standards. It's like déjà vu for Cubans who remember the tough times of the 1990s. Another similarity is the government's response. In both cases, the Cuban government has implemented austerity measures and rationing programs to cope with the crisis. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's often seen as a necessary evil. However, there are also some key differences between the current crisis and the special period. For one thing, Cuba's economy is more diversified today than it was in the 1990s. The country has developed a tourism industry and has expanded its trade relations with other countries. This has helped to cushion the impact of the crisis. Another difference is the role of technology. Today, Cubans have access to smartphones and the internet, which can help them to connect with the outside world and access information. This was not the case during the special period. So, while the current crisis shares some similarities with the special period, it is also a unique challenge. The long-term implications of the crisis for Cuba's economy and society remain to be seen. However, it is clear that the country faces a difficult road ahead. So, where does Cuba go from here? It's a tough question, but there are both challenges and opportunities on the horizon. Let's start with the challenges. One of the biggest obstacles facing Cuba is the U.S. embargo. This policy continues to limit Cuba's access to international trade and investment. It's like trying to run a business with one arm tied behind your back. Another challenge is Cuba's aging infrastructure. The country's energy grid and transportation systems are in need of modernization. This will require significant investments, which can be difficult to come by in a struggling economy. On the other hand, there are also opportunities for Cuba. The country has a well-educated population and a rich cultural heritage. This could be a major asset for the tourism industry. Additionally, Cuba has potential for renewable energy development. The island receives plenty of sunshine, which could be harnessed to generate clean electricity. Ultimately, the future of Cuba will depend on its ability to overcome these challenges and seize these opportunities. It's a daunting task, but it's not impossible. With the right policies and international support, Cuba can emerge from this crisis stronger than ever. So, while the road ahead may be bumpy, there is hope for Cuba. The island nation has a resilient people and a rich history. By working together and making smart choices, Cuba can build a brighter future for its citizens. Well, there you have it. A deep dive into Cuba's economic and energy crisis. From the special period to the present day, the island nation has faced immense challenges. So, what do you think? Is there hope for Cuba? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more informative content. See you next time.